Hi TackleDirect fans, I am Patrick Sebile, lure designer for A Band of Anglers. Today I want to talk to you about another of my hyperlastic baits, and that's actually the one lure that caught pretty much 2/3 of my bass over 4 pounds the past 2.5 years. And the name of this bait? The Curly Minn. The Curly Minn is a big curly tail, but that is made of soft stuff, which means it's a really long-lasting material which is buoyant, and this is why that's such a big deal. So it comes with two different models basically. We have the Pro Curly Minn, which means it's painted, and the Pro one comes with a weighted wide gap hook, perfect to cast and retrieve on a straight retrieve. Use it as a swim bait. Every time you pitch it or flip it and let it fall, also it fall and have a motion going, a bit sideways, a bit of chasing, and when it lands on the bottom, it actually lands and floats like this. So that's a bit of a go-to for a search bait when you want to use the Curly Minn with that wide gap weighted hook. So the floating one comes like this. It's rigged with a deep extra wide gap hook, and you have that little ring in the nose. And that ring is here for a big purpose, and the purpose is freedom. Freedom because that guy floats, and the 0.2 grams of that eye in the front give a little bit more of an angle when it's on the top. So actually when you retrieve it, thanks to that, it puts the tail in the perfect position to make a wake. Yes, I say that again, a wake. When you reel this guy at slow speed, it's going to work on the top, and the tail is going to make a wake. That means part of the tail is out of the water and made that absolutely super attractive action, wake action, thanks to the tail. And also at the same time the body will wobble a little bit, giving even more life into that lure. That's why I'm a huge fan of the topwater one. It's a floating one, not limited to topwater, by the way. So we can rig this guy different ways. For example, Texas rig. So one of the most used way of rigging soft plastic, of course, you can now cast, let that guy work on bottom, go into logs and rocks, and be sure that it will work all the time on the way down. And when you follow the bottom, follow the structures and make it work, it also at rest always will stay and float like that. So staying very visible, and you will just barely need to move the rod tip for an inch or two to have immediately the tail react and give some swim action to that. Now, one thing I didn't went through in the detail is that thanks to the soft of material, which again is long lasting and buoyant, but it allows me to have a bit of a complex shape. So let's go to see more in detail about what I'm talking about. So the shape allows me to have holes in the front. So there's two holes. Typically when you want to use it as a floating lure, you want a hook to exit on the first front hole here underneath the shin. And then if you want to go more with a weighted wide gap hook, then you want to go in the second one. And then we have that deep cut in the back. So that deep cut not only keeps, as you can see pretty well here, keeps the hook well hidden inside, but then once you hook the fish, it's going to go much more easily out, and the lure will not really be an interference for your hooking ratio to hook your big bass on this guy. I was mentioning the two holes. So you see when you have the weighted wide gap hook exiting from the second hole here, give a bit more horizontal position to have also a great action, not just with the tail but also the body having some level of wobbling, which is very unusual but great because very attractive to the fish. Now, another of the most common way to rig and use soft plastic, of course, is to use them on a Carolina rig. So this is one of the most perfect bait, and I hate to use superlative, but I say what I really believe in. It's one of the most perfect bait when it comes to Carolina rig. Why? Well, because typically with a regular soft plastic, you're going to drag the bait, the weight and the bait on bottom, and it does catch bass, of course, we all know that. But in that very case, when you're going to drag the weight on the bottom, well, actually the Curly Minn is floating behind. That means the Curly Minn is going to be anywhere between 6, 8 inch, 10 inch above the bottom behind, and you're going to drag, and this guy is going to have the tail swimming and the body wobbling. right behind. And anytime you make a pause, it will gently, slowly goes back to the vertical. And just at the moment you pull on the rod tip again, we will have all kind of swim action. So it's incredibly effective. And as that's a 6-inch long bait, it's perfect to, big profile, perfect to target the big bass. Really super efficient. Of course, one of the simplest and easiest way and super effective way, of course, to use any or most soft plastic are jig heads. So indeed, that's the case here as well. But a jig head with the right hook size, you typically need to have 4, 5, or 6 0 hook with this guy. And the weight, you can put 1/4, but I typically like a lot 3/8. I like ½ ounce or 3/4 ounce for typical cast and retrieve action. And still, you can cast and retrieve and have great action, but then when you let it fall on the bottom, it's gonna fall and land like this because it's so buoyant. And really it's like this, not like that or like that, no. Based on the position of the weight and the buoyancy of the body, it really will land and stay like that. So you can make pause in a way you can't with regular soft plastic and still be very efficient. And then you can basically drag very slowly the weight on the bottom, and any speed will be enough and plenty to get the action you want from the tail. So very efficient way. Not too far from that, of course, you have the swim jigs with a brush, very snagless, help you to fish much better with less risk of snag if you want to fish into branches, logs, lily pads, stuff like that. Super efficient. And then I want to finish this video for some use that are more dedicated typically to saltwater, heavy and big waters. For example, Fluke. Fluke is an incredibly attracted fish by this guy. Fluke loved the action, absolutely loved the action of the Curly Minn. And a 6-inch is a great way to catch good flukes. So what is this? Well, that's just another Texas rig, right? But you see in that case, for example, you have a 3 or 4 ounce or 2 ounce, depend where you fish, of course, the depth, the distance, the currents, just a bead, and then you attach the line, the leader again to that ring. So you have all the action and you can drag on the bottom. And even when you leave it still, when you leave this rig still on the bottom, it's going to just float up, and any current, any waves on the top, any turbulence in the water will give life to that. And that's a great reason of why does it work so great. And the Fluke, which are bottom feeders, love that action. So you can drag in the sandy, muddy area where they are, even if you have some oysters, mussels on bottom, with not too much risk of snagging. Some always, there's no zero snag possibility in the oysters or mussels, but you can be super efficient fishing that. And of course, a lot of other fish, black sea bass, for example, calico bass, black halibut in California, will also love this bait with that very simple and efficient rig. And I finish with a bit more technical rig that can do the same thing. This is the bouncing bouncing bucktail from Oceanborn. My bucktail here is balanced. I have wings that helps to give more glide if you want to jig it. For example, when you land on bottom, it will 100% of the time stay like this, which is even more true because adding that Curly Minn with a drop of super glue. And if you stay still, again, just any current, any wave will give life to this. That's why just keeping that on the bottom allowed me to hook redfish, tarpon, snook, in place like Sebastian Inlet in Florida. So that's super efficient. Of course, the Fluke will still like it, but you also can have all kind of action, just bottom bounce like the normal way. You can have that typical cast and retrieve that most people do, which is very efficient with bucktail, and sometimes just shaking the rod tip. You can also jig it and go up and down, have a lot of action. So that's another beautiful way, super efficient way to use the Curly Minn, one of my most efficient bait. The results are here to say that. So there you go.